that it could permit for early retirement prior to the age of 55. Mr. Molefe is 50 years old, which was agreed when Mr. Molefe's initial contract was concluded in 2015. Mr. Molefe is 50 years old in brackets. Secondly, the board admits that it was also mistaken in using the wrong provision of the pension fund rules to approve his early retirement in November 2016. In realizing the mistake, the board took a decision to rescind its approval of Mr. Molefe's retirement. As a consequence of the resolution to rescind the early retirement, the board took a decision to reinstate Mr. Molefe in terms of the employment contract and for him to resume his duties as Eskom GCE on 15 May 2017. That is reverting to the original employment contract in terms of which he was originally hired. To bridge the gap between the period 1 January 2017 and 14 May 2017, when Mr. Molefe was in Parliament, the board decided to treat that period as unpaid leave. Observations by the IMC. On 11 November 2016, Mr. Molefe announced his decision to step down at a media briefing in the interest of good governance and to clear his name following the well-publicized Public Protector's State of Capture report. Eskom and the minister both issued media statements noting the decision and regretting Mr. Molefe's departure. Mr. Molefe was subsequently sworn in as an ANC member of Parliament, specifically the National Assembly, on 1 January 2017 and subsequently relinquished his membership of the National Assembly on 11 May 2017. Mr. Matsela Koko was appointed as acting GCE from 1 December 2016. The Eskom board advertised the vacancy of Group Chief Executive Officer on the 5th March 2017, and candidates were shortlisted. The initial appointment of Mr. Molefe in October 2015 was concluded under the 2014 Memorandum of Incorporation, MOI, which required ministers' approval of the appointment but did not make the minister a party to the employment agreement. Subsequently, the MOI was renegotiated in July 2016 and empowered the minister not only to approve the appointment of the GCE, but to also be party to the employment contract. On 11 May 2017, the board concluded a reinstatement agreement without the minister being party to it as prescribed in the MOI. Although the matter is still to be adjudicated by the courts, the view of the IMC is that this is a new contract and that the minister should have been cited as a party in compliance with the 2016 MOI. In its own affidavit, Eskom makes major concessions. Firstly, in concluding the initial employment contract in 2015, Eskom and Mr. Molefe agreed on pension terms that would have allowed him to retire at 50, which is in contravention of Eskom pension and provident fund rules. Secondly, when Mr. Molefe stepped down, the board used the incorrect provisions in accepting his retirement, using a retrenchment provision and not retirement. The IMC also met with the board where the concessions were confirmed, but the board was of the view that the mistakes were made in good faith. The IMC is of the view that both mistakes could have been corrected administratively and not by the board opting to reinstate Mr. Molefe. Without pronouncing on the possible outcome of the case and in light of the objective facts mentioned above, the IMC is of the view that it will be in the best interest of government, Eskom, and the country as a whole that the Minister of Public Enterprises directs the board to rescind the decision to reinstate Mr. Molefe as Group Chief Executive of Eskom. On matters relating to the board, the IMC welcomes the announcement by the Minister of Public Enterprises that she will deal with matters relating to the board at the upcoming annual general meeting on the 23rd, June 2017. I thank you.
Okay, Minister. Thank you. In the interest of time.
Should I not do mine?
Okay, Minister.
I think the Minister may want to follow on this because this is advice to the Minister by the IMC, and that concludes our work. And may I take the opportunity perhaps to hand back to the Minister, who is the responsible executive authority in this regard.
Well, acting in my capacity as shareholder representative, we met with the Eskom board today, and this is after we've had several engagements with the board, with the IMC. Collectively, looking at all the facts at our disposal, and in the interests of the country and good governance, I thus directed the Eskom board to rescind the decision to reinstate Mr. Molefe as the Eskom GCE. Due process must be followed in the filling of the role of Group Chief Executive. At today's meeting, I directed the board to rescind its decision, and the board must provide me with at least 2 names from within the executives to act as GCE, and I intend appointing an acting GCE within the next 48 hours to ensure continuity. Eskom is an important entity for South Africa and its sovereignty. We therefore have to be decisive in dealing with any matters relating to uncertainty in the utility. The Eskom AGM is coming up in the next 3 weeks. That's the 23rd of June, where I will deal with matters relating to the board. It is important that these matters are brought to conclusion urgently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Can I say in the interest of time and fairness, when you ask a question, only one question, because you'll be eating into the time of the others. I'll allow around 3 only, 2 in Pretoria and the final round in Cape Town. Annika first.
Thank you very much, Colin. Annika Larson from ENCA. To Minister Brown, please, have you taken legal advice with regards to this decision, because Benham Ngubane has expressed concern, and so did you, that you would have to pay more than 30 million should he take you to the CCMA? And have you let Mr. Molefe know, and what was his reaction? Thank you.
At the back, SABC.
Thank you very much. Lukhanya Chalata, SABC. Ma'am, as mentioned, the mistakes that were made by the board, I mean, you know, if my son, who's 4, makes a mistake, it's understandable. These are people that should be quite highly qualified. And for them to make childish mistakes like these, surely there must be, you know, consequences for them. And, you know, what are the consequences, if any, that will be directed to the board? Thanks very much.
The final one in Cape Town. Okay, Linda.
Yes, Just confirmation that now, as of now, Mr. Molefe is no longer the Group CEO of Eskom. And if all these mistakes, errors, why does it need an IMC to come to this decision, Ms. Brown, when you could have reached the same decision 5 weeks ago? Thanks.
Okay, Minister, and Chair, to the panel. It's better if you answer first, Minister.
Write down the questions. The first one is, did we get legal counsel? We had legal counsel throughout the process. And we had Eskom's board with its company secretary present at some of them. I've not spoken to Brian Molefe. That is a decision that the board will have to, not a decision, but they will have to have the conversation. I meet the board in 3 weeks' time. I would like to not send more scurry in the market. Part of the problem is that we do have a AGM coming up. And the AGM will give us the financial statements for the year, audited financial statements for the year, and the ARC will have to meet just before that. Now, for that to be completed, I thought we'd give the 3 weeks in which the board completes that matter from the executives amongst themselves, not the board, the executives in Eskom. Give me 2 names of people who would be able to continue the process as we are going forward, and then I will decide to rotate the board. And why should it was actually quite a complex. There were many complex issues in this matter. It wasn't a simple issue that we had to deal with, and when the president intervened and brought all the members of the who largely, other than the Minister of Justice, largely have a hand in Eskom. I mean, the Minister of Finance signs off on PFMAs in terms of 51G. The Minister of Energy directs in terms of policy. And then, since a lot of the stuff has been within the legal domain, it was good to have the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services with us. In fact, it was actually a very good very good engagement, and it's worthwhile. I'm hoping that my department has recorded the engagement, because this is an engagement that we should be having, not necessarily with all the ministers, but that the department should be having with all the state-owned companies. Thank you.
Can I just find out any questions?
Thanks, Chairperson. We don't have questions in Pretoria.
You were very fast. All the ministers are here. Okay. Can I have Wendell, Paul?
There's a question as to whether Brian is no longer now the GC. The issue is as soon as the board tells him.
Okay, Minister Masata. Any other, do you want to add? Or?
No, I just wanted to indicate that in terms of our mandate, we had to advise the Minister of Public Enterprises following the observations we've made on an appropriate course of action. And upon doing that, we become functus officio. It remains with her to act on the advice, and we felt that it was important that without delay, as the IMC, because this is not a, for example, a press briefing of the board or necessarily of the minister. It is the briefing of the IMC communicating the advice that it has given, and thereby concluding the mandate it was given. And the advice is as articulated in this statement. How that then gets carried forward, and it would have been inappropriate, I think, for us as an IMC to then meddle into how the minister and the board then takes the matter forward with the affected person or persons for that matter. So I just thought from our side that that context may need to be provided.
Now for a final round. Wendell, Paul, Tabu, and Annika.
Sorry, Chairperson, we also have a question in Pretoria.
Okay, at the end I'll come back to you. We'll continue. Okay.
My question is to Minister Gigaba, please, if you don't mind. Minister, just in terms of the reputational harm that this is done to SOEs and the whole cleanup, and in terms of them being a vital driver of both economic transformation, but in terms of the economy, how important was it to clear this up quickly, so that we could, so that the credit rating agencies could take note of it, the importance thereof, and also Minister Brown. Sorry, I didn't quite understand. With regards to the board, did you say that once the AGM meeting has concluded, you are going to sort of get rid of them or something like that? Or I didn't quite hear that. What sort of way forward are you looking with regards to the board? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brown. What kind of message does this send to people who hold Eskom debt at the moment? Eskom's, I think, got about 200 billion rand in debts in the markets. So what is your message to them after all of this whole saga? Secondly, I just want to understand, this morning you said in front of the Steering Committee that you had to meet with the board first as part of a process of natural justice, something along those lines. Have you met with them since, and that's why you can actually come up with the announcement today? And then finally, I don't know if the Minister of Justice or the Minister of Finance, or whoever can answer this, has any recommendation or offer or plan been made to maybe give Mr. Molefe another appointment somewhere else? Thank you.
I'll give Tabu.
No, thanks, Colin. I'm covered by Wendell. I wanted to ask about the fitness of the board to continue in office.
Annika?
Thank you for taking my second question. Will Mr. Molefe be receiving any monies owed to him or any money to make him feel a little bit better, considering he could view it as having been completely messed around? Thank you.
To the panel, I see this last hand from Leicester. Okay.
Colin, Minister Brown, do we know if Mr. Molefe has signed off on any projects while this week and a bit he was back as CEO? And if so, would these projects be re-looked at and those decisions also rescinded?
Over to the panel to respond. Minister and Minister Masuta.
Yes, thank you. You know, the events of the last 3 weeks have been quite painful in a number of ways. The view of the IMC, as stated by Minister Masuta, is that this decision should not have been taken, that the board, if it sought to correct any anomalies in the issues that arose when the Group CE resigned or retired, they could have done so administratively without them having to take the decision that they took. It's caused government a lot of harm, a lot of reputational damage. It has caused the Eskom itself a lot of reputational damage. It has caused board members a lot of reputational damage. The Minister of Public Enterprises, the decision ought not to have been taken in the first instance. Now, it was not, once they had taken the decision and acted on it, as we say in our findings, without properly involving the Minister of Public Enterprises, we needed to follow necessary process in order to arrive at this decision, because we couldn't arrive at a conclusion prior to us following due process, and we have done so. We believe that much as harm has been caused, but the decision has finally been taken, which we hope will redeem the utility as well as the image of government. Sitting where I sit, I would not have wanted this decision to be taken in the first instance, not only given the ratings agencies, because I think insofar as the governance of state-owned companies, we should not only act correctly just to please the ratings agencies. We should act correctly precisely because these are public entities, and the resources which they hold on behalf of the people of South Africa. State-owned companies have a guarantee framework of up to 477 billion rand. 350 of that is allocated to Eskom. What I would prefer is that this guarantee framework is used to strengthen the balance sheets of state-owned companies in order to support their capital investments and the expansion of their investment programs, rather than to be viewed to be financing inefficiency and other weaknesses. And so the issues of governance are quite important because I don't believe that there is something inherently inefficient in state-owned companies. I believe that state-owned companies as public enterprises can be run in terms of good governance. They can be run properly by well-capable people, particularly also because they pay quite well and they have got quite good incentives. And so it behoves those that are on the boards to ensure that the decisions they take are in the best interests of the entities as well as in the best interests of government. And that is why in our statement as the IMC we indicate that the decision we've taken it in the best interests of government, in the best interests of the country, and in the best interests of Eskom itself. And that links to the question that Paul has asked about the message to Eskom debt holders, because we would want them to continue having faith that the shareholder will, when there are mistakes committed by the boards and the executive directors, that the shareholder will intervene to self-correct, to ensure that the good governance is applied, to ensure that proper decisions are taken, and if any mistakes are taken, we as the shareholders will correct those mistakes. The important thing for us, particularly in this very difficult economic climate, where we have experienced as a country some downgrades, both at S&P with regard to our dollar-denominated currency as well as by Fitch. The important thing for us is to take into cognizance that the cost of borrowing for state-owned companies is increasing, has increased. It has an impact on infrastructure rollout, and with that, you have seen some of our state-owned companies, particularly Transnet, struggling to raise capital in the bond markets internationally. And so it's important for us as we work towards restoring our investment grade and reigniting growth in the economy, that we pay attention to the state-owned companies, particularly those that have a responsibility for infrastructure investments, those that must go out to the bond markets to raise capital, to also ensure that we support them by taking decisions that will eventually reduce the cost of borrowing so that we can be able to meet our infrastructure investments objectives. And so we are taking this decision in the very best interests of the country, of the public, and in the very best interests of our state-owned companies as a whole, and hope that the decision will be received well by the bondholders. But let me also hasten to add, as I finalize, that the decision we are taking is not a reflection, and I think the entire discussion throughout this period is not a reflection on the capabilities or lack thereof of Mr. Mlife. He is well capable. He has proven himself in a number of his previous responsibilities. We believe that he still has an enormous contribution to make to the country in whatever way it will be going forward. But we are taking this interest in this decision in the interest of good governance. And there is no decision on our part about where he is going to go, Paul. There are no plans to appoint him anywhere else. We are just taking a decision in relation to his position at Eskom. And in relation to good governance and what consequences there will be for the board. I think the minister has indicated that she is going to rotate the board. There obviously has to be some consequences with regard to the decisions that to this situation that we have come out of, and we also, much as there have been mistakes, we also believe that board members as individuals are very well capable people with enormous and extensive experience in private sector, in governance. The decision may have been a wrong one, but we are not reflecting on their capabilities and their competencies to play whatever role they need to play in the private sector going forward. But insofar as the board of Eskom is concerned, we are saying that the decision that was taken was unfortunate, and the minister has consented to that. She has directed the board to rescind that decision. Thank you.
Maybe just to add a point that to amplify a point that Minister Gigaba makes, that this decision is not or does not purport to be a reflection on Mr. Molefe. In fact, the IMC took heart from the statement, well-publicized statement he made on the 11th of November 2016, when he announced his decision to step down at a media briefing, where he gave reasons for that decision as being in the interest of good governance and to clear his name following well-publicized public protector comments, public protector's statement on so-called state capture report. So, I mean, that was clearly a reflection of a level of responsibility on his part. It may well be that following deliberations subsequent thereto between himself and the board, a particular solution was arrived at which they believed could be sustained, and that's where we part ways with them to say, in our estimation, that decision was not a well-calculated one. So I just thought I needed to also put that perspective into the equation. Anybody else from our side?
Just maybe I just should answer some of the questions. Did I meet the board? Yes. They're still waiting for me in my office. I'm going to meet them again now. To answer Lester's questions, Annika's questions, because there are a number of questions that I need to put to the board now. and other questions that we need to, so that they clear up all of those matters before we have the meeting at on the 23rd of June. Look, you know, the big issue is, and I think Minister Gigaba raises it very well, the governance issues belie the fact that the company is a going concern, a very good going concern company. In fact, if I just use the figure Minister Gigaba used now, 350 billion rand in guarantees that has been extended to 2023. And Eskom has drawn down 200 billion rand of that. There's still 150 billion rand in terms of its build program. And the infrastructure development is probably the greatest backbone of our economy that the state-owned companies have. In a time when people aren't building, private sector's not building, the state-owned companies are. And we must keep that, because we've got to keep or get our economy to be growing again. With the 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts spare capacity, it should be using that to getting the economy to grow again. So the governance issues are difficult issues to deal with in the state-owned companies. But there are matters that we just have to tie up properly and get it sorted out immediately. I think we're 2 weeks too late, but I mean, it has, you know, we did it. So what happens to all the contracts that Mr. Murphy signed? That I will know when I speak to the board today. And of course, the board might not know that answer either. So they must come back and report back on those discussions. The same with salary. I have an idea in my head, but let me not put my head on the table. I don't know that yet. I'm going to speak to the board today.
Just hang on this.
Are you going to rotate, you say, after the AGM?
Well, I'm saying I have the opportunity to rotate the board. Not the word you used.
It is opportunity, Wendell. A final round in Pretoria.
Thanks, Chairperson. The question was covered by our colleagues. Oh, we do have a question.
Hi, Slee from Jacaranda FM News. I'd like the Minister to please clarify, what does she mean as soon as the board tells Brian Molefe about this decision? Is he not aware, or is she not aware that he's not aware that this decision to reappoint him has been rescinded?
That's all from us, Chairperson. Back to Cape Town.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Let me just come in here. I think colleagues need to understand that in terms of the process and the briefing here, it's about the work that has been done by the IMC, and better part of the implementation of the process is left in the hands of the minister and the board. So that's why we're saying that from our work, this is where we end. And minister will have to, as she's saying, going back to the meeting with the board and finalize all the implementation process. So communication, how the structure of what is going to happen will happen, that because you can't have us as Inter-Ministerial Committee entering into that space. So I think it will only be fair to allow her space to deal with that process and then possibly communicate with the relevant people. Thanks.
Okay, ministers. Thank you to the members of the media. Thank you, and the panel. Thank you.